Okay, welcome everyone to the March 4th meeting of the Town of Richmond Selectboard. I would like to begin before I ask for open public comment to make this public comment of my own. This will be Mr. Jeff Forward's last meeting in this term on the Select Board. He, of course, may run again at some point in the future, but he's worked very hard in the last 2 years as a member of the Select Board, has endured some very late night meetings, in addition to the work he's done on behalf of the Town Center Committee. So I just like to thank Jeff for all the time he's put in, all the effort. And I hope that you will not be a stranger, because I know you really like stumbling out of this room at 11:30 at night in the cold. And the thing is, you can still do that.
Hey, well, I look forward to doing that sometime in before 2030.
Okey-dokey. Is there any other public comment on any item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Are there any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? Seeing none, we can go ahead and move into the warrant agenda. The first item on our agenda relates to town meeting, which is tomorrow. We have copies of the town report.
Hey, fine.
This is this.
Let's go on.
Okay, right. Sorry. We have bound copies of the town report here at the town center. They're also available on the Town of Richmond website. They include a copy of the budget, property transfers, reports from the zoning administrator, various committee officers. It's only 114 pages long, but I do recommend people take the time to glance at it. The town meeting will be tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning at Camel's Hump Middle School. And I'm not going to review every item on the town meeting agenda, but it is on the website if you don't have it. The most important thing to mention is that because of the state's belated realization that their legislation had put school boards into kind of a bind, the relief that the state finally issued has caused MMU and quite a few other school districts to push out their budget voting. And so all ballot items relating to the Mount Mansfield Union School District budget and other offices will be pushed out to April 2nd, with the exception of, as I understand, the representative from Richmond to the school board. That election will still.
No, I think it all.
That's been all moved.
I
Okay.
think every single item on the school got moved.
Everything school board got moved. Okay.
Yeah.
So there will be voting at the town center from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the 2nd of April. If anybody here or anybody listening did get a ballot mailed to them and has cast it already, they will be getting another ballot mailed to them specifically for the school items. Are there any other comments or questions or anything about the school stuff?
So what happens to the people who already voted and submitted their ballot? Those ballots invalid or
Yeah.
just get discarded?
Those ballots get discarded, but Linda has a list of everybody who's already cast a ballot, and they will get a new ballot mailed to them. So they'll have that ballot delivered directly to them so that they can drop it off to the town center early if they'd like before April 2nd.
And one reason for
They do have to vote again.
one reason for them having to vote again is that the budget they voted for is not the budget that will be before the voters on April 2nd. In all likelihood, because the whole thing is to give them a chance to adjust the budget because of Act 127, the 5% cap and stuff. So the budget that comes before them on April 2nd may be something that they would not vote for. So it has to be seen as a fresh vote. Lisa, you had something.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I was looking at the warrants and we've already paid for the ballots. Do we have to pay again to have them printed again?
So the state is going to help reimburse
Good.
some of the costs of the school budget revote.
Okay, so I was
Good.
hoping to hear that. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, and I'll make a comment in that this is unprecedented as far as I know. I know of no other time that this has ever happened. And I'll just comment that I think it's extremely unfortunate. It was unforeseeable on our part and on the school board's part. And I think it's really unfortunate.
Right. I went to a meeting of the where the budget was presented by the school board finance committee, and I very quickly came to the conclusion that under no circumstances do I ever want to be on the school board.
Yeah, I was, and I was on the finance committee, and it's, you know, in many ways, it's harder than this one because it's much longer.
Mhm.
You know, and it's even harder now that it's, you know, all, what, 8 schools, right? So it's quite challenging.
Right, and I take my hat off to anybody, including Josh's wife Tara, for the late hours they've put in.
Oh, one last thing.
Okay.
So, one thing that I think a lot of people either don't realize or don't think about, is one of the things, the positive things that the legislature did, recognizing that, it's problematic to have school budgets based strictly on property tax, is they did make, particularly the school budget income sensitive up to a point. So it's very important for people to file their homestead exemption. I think it's by April 1st. It's before you file your taxes. And what that allows you to do is when the time comes to reconcile your income tax with the state, I think they were changing it as about 2.5% of your income. Anything over 2.5% of your income potentially is eligible for reimbursement directly to the town. And the town gets, I think I asked Connie this, it's something, it's over $1 million worth of reimbursement to offset those taxes. So homestead exemption and income sensitivity are built into the school budget, no matter what it is.
Thanks for sharing that, Jeff. That's an excellent point. Okay, moving on to our second item on the agenda. The Housing Committee has some open seats. There are currently 3 vacant seats on the committee, and these seats are for terms expiring at the end of May 2024. We will make appointments to those seats, knock on wood that they will have candidates at the end of May to start on June 1st, and then those seats will run until 2026. However, we have a candidate for the currently available seat, so we were looking to appoint somebody potentially through the end of May, and then that person could put his hat back in the ring for the next 2 years. Andrew Mannix has applied to be appointed to the Housing Committee. Information about Mr. Mannix is in your packet. I do not see.
He's not able to, well, he emailed me this afternoon, said he had a prior commitment until about 7:30 this evening. And then he was gonna maybe try to log in. And so if you had questions for him, you could table and see if he jumps in later on, or you table till March 18th, or if you're,
Or do we
or
feel,
if you're good
do you-
with his application, you can move forward.
what is the committee's pleasure?
Hang on, in this case, are we just looking to appoint him to the remaining
For the remaining
week
term,
or
which,
month or whatever? Of the term?
for April and May,
Okay.
and
then
part of March. So we could, if you wish to go ahead and just say, from what you've read in the packet, he looks good. There is a motion in the packet, or you could say, let's move this item out a half hour and see if he shows up.
After reading his application, I'm comfortable with nominating him, and we can discuss it.
Okay.
Point out that he's a realtor, which could be helpful, and experience with housing.
Is that a motion?
Yes, I move to appoint Andrew Mannix to fill a term on the Housing Committee, which runs from May 30 until May 31st, 2024.
This is Bart, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made by Jeff Ford, a second by Bart Hill, to appoint Andrew Mannix to fill a term on the Housing Committee, which runs until May 31st, 2024. Is there any further discussion?
I'll say it won't hurt my feelings if anybody, wants to table it for half an hour, but I don't need that.
I'm comfortable with going ahead and. Anything else?
But if he does come in, or is able to.
We
still
can,
talk to him, so.
we can sure, yeah, say congratulations and tell the town about yourself. Sure.
Good.
Okay, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye?
Bart, aye.
Stand by.
Jay, aye. Okay, our next item has to do with the Casella drop-off center. Casella, as most people in the town know, has been operating our transfer station for a couple of years now since we changed from CSWD. And they have asked us if they can go cashless at the dump. I will tell you truthfully, I did not know until Saturday that they take cards. Because for years I've been going, Carol, do you have enough cash to? And when I got there on Saturday and was talking to the gentleman at the window, he's like, what do you mean? We're take cards. And he pointed up at the stickers with the credit card logos were just out of sight above my car windows. I had no idea. But so they have been taking plastic for some time. The goal here is to stop taking cash. And I asked the gentleman at the window, well, what about people who are not economically well off and who do not have bank accounts, who carry nothing but cash? And he said that there would be this is not Ryan Deneen saying this is the guy at the window, but he said they would make exceptions for that. So do you have any intelligence about that? Or is
Ryan Deneen's actually.
Ryan, I'm so sorry. You actually are here. Okay, you were there the whole time. Ryan, could you please let us know about going cashless and things like what would we do for people who don't have bank accounts?
So let me give you a quick rundown. We have gone cashless at 7 other sites already. Starting June 1st last year at our Montpelier site. And I will address all your concerns. So initially, I also was actually on the end of thinking like, I don't know if this is a good idea or any of that stuff, right? It's probably some of the same things you're thinking. It's turned out not to be operationally from either like a customer standpoint or certainly from our standpoint, hindering, I would say, the vast majority, 99+%, right? What we have done and still do is we accept exact change. So what we wouldn't have is like a big bank on site to start the day, right? But someone who comes in every week and, basically knows that my 15-gallon bag plus my recycling's in and my food's in, I always pay $5. They bring $5, we take it. What we wouldn't have is, somebody bringing us 20s and then being like, oh, well, it's 13. And then we'd have 7 back. So that would be where the adjustment would take a little bit of time for people to adjust to. We were requesting to kind of get to this point at May 1st, where, I would start advertising this to be 2 months out from now or a month and a half out from now. And kind of give people a large heads up that would be coming. We've also had that credit card machine in place for a while, so we do know that one, it is reliable. It's not like crapping out, so it would be a smooth transition to people having cards. But yeah, we would still take cards. Lots of people already pay in checks, and I think a vast majority, as I found at other locations, don't really care which way they pay. But some people will not like it, at least initially. We found at each location, there's a period where people don't love it, right? Just from the idea on face value, but that it really hasn't hindered anyone in particular to use our site, including people who may not have access to a bank account, because we will take exact change. We just won't be in the position of like making change for people.
Okay, Bard.
So a comment and then a follow-up. So one of the things I was interested in, I looked up what's the estimated percentage of Vermonters who are unbanked, which is a word. And we are the second lowest in the United States at 0.7%. Other states are much higher than that.
Interesting.
So on the one hand, it's a pretty small percentage of people. But then in terms of making the change, it would seem to me that what we want is for people to get ahead of this, combination of front porch forum, signage at the drop-off center, giving people warning, like, so they aren't showing up one day, oops, like
Starting on such and such
Yeah.
date.
What's involved?
So I think advance notice and publicity is probably a good
Yeah.
thing to do.
And I do get the thing about banks being much more reluctant to just say, here's a big stack of quarters. When I was going on vacation one time, I took the weird urge to say, I'll get a whole bunch of $2 bills. And those are still a thing. And they had none to give. They said, actually, we hardly stock any cash at all now. I'm like, but you're a bank. And they're like, yeah, but no cash anymore.
Kind of like a church has no pews or something.
Yeah.
That's actually been one of our problems. Our own banks, and we're a decent account, right? And we would go to the bank and they won't give us change. So we had people that were running around town spending 4-5 hours, different banks, and then week to week starting to get denied, getting change. That was one consideration. On the back end, we found it has helped us, right? Just streamline things. Like we don't have to wait for deposits coming in every single day to get counted. It's all, there that we can just look up. So that has been a help to us for sure. Also, it's just, taken a little bit of like pressure at the end of the day to because these sites are more like satellite, they're not like right outside of our office or anything like that, that someone always has to drive an extra 35 minutes to drop a bank off, right? And then go back home. So some of it is just, there is convenience. At the end of the day, also not counting everything has been here on our employees. So there are benefits to us for sure, which is part of why we want to move over to it. We don't like chasing banks around for cash, like you mentioned, which is kind of weird because you're a bank, right? You would think there's the change. But yeah, those are all considerations that have started moving us towards this.
Yeah, frankly, it makes sense. It's just, this does not require a vote on our part. This is really informational. And so I just agree we need to make sure that we get ahead of this and make sure people know. Aaron, you have a question.
Hi, yes, I do. Recently, heading over to the drop-off zone, I was trying to figure out how much it was going to run me, and I saw no pricing on the website. Can you add that, or is it in flux and it's something that can't be added to the website? Thanks.
I can address that. It's not going to get added to the website because we have so many locations, like even out of state and everything, that when someone would try to Google a location, even if unless they were diligent saying Richmond drop off, they would get a range of prices because, there's just different prices sometimes because of contracts we have with towns, or different prices because most of them are streamlined, but everything's not perfect. The way we do pricing with your town with recycle and food included into the price of the bag makes that different. So the home office doesn't want to have 18,000 different prices that can just be Googled out and have people be confused. So that's why we don't do that online, like CSWD, which kind of just runs those two locations that are the same. So kind of changes the nature of it for us. So that's why we don't have it posted online. I've tried to, I think, Josh, did I work with you? Were we ever able to put that thing that I sent out that didn't have a logo thing onto Front Porch Forum? Or
I don't think we ever did that, but as we're talking here, will we be able to post prices on the Richmond website and maybe have a link from Casella's to our site, or even if there's not a link, if we can post the pricing on our site, then that's at least a way for someone to find it.
Yes, and I can resend. I believe I sent you something, but I can refind it and resend it to you if you would like that. And that would be available for something that you could do like that for the town, where we could have that out so that we could have that pricing out there. I can also reprint just some paper copies for people to grab while they're at the depot if they'd like to take one home. I'm happy to kind of get some of those out because I do that at some of the other depots when people want a physical copy. I know that doesn't necessarily solve having it ahead of time.
No, if
Sometimes-
we put it on the site, and then if we get some of the printed out copies, we can put them with the town clerk, and she's sort of hub of information. I'm sure she'd hand some out, and people could then put them on their fridge if they wanted to.
Yeah, I can get those copies. Yep.
Okay, Lisa, go ahead.
You know, I noticed Casella is still charging us a $3 late fee every time we pay our bill to them. Still, I saw it in the warrants today. And I think, from what I understand, the problem is you're sending the bill out at a time where it doesn't get here in time for our bill cycle to pay it. So you charge us $3, charge us $3, charge us $3. I would like your assurance you're going to stop doing that to us before I vote on this.
You're
We
getting
have-
charged on the
There's no-
dollar.
Okay, then we don't vote.
I think that's on our, yeah.
Well, it's three. I don't think we're late. We're not late with anything. And I think, from what I understand, the problem is you're sending the bill out at a time where it doesn't get here in time for our bill. I'm sure.
Raj's feedback.
No.
on
Oh,
that.
okay.
Ryan, I can follow up with you or your billing department. I don't know exactly why we're getting the fee, but it might be a timing issue, but we can follow up on that.
That's what I've heard. It's, you know, it's
Yeah.
kind of one of these.
Yeah, I know there's a few companies like that, that we, like the timing of their billing doesn't cycle in with our timing of our payments and
Right.
we get the $3
We
fee.
pay it
So
when we get it.
if we
It's
can
already
put-
got a late
yeah, if we can bump it out like 10 days, it's sometimes helpful. So Ryan, I can follow up with you if that, because I know that's
I can-
probably not your department at all.
No, but I know who I can
Okay.
find contact with. Yeah, that seems like something I could easily stop having a random late fee attached.
I'd appreciate it. It's, you know, very small, but it's just annoying.
It's a principal thing.
That's annoying.
Ryan- Yeah, Ryan, thank you so much. And we will work with you to make sure this is publicized as thoroughly as we mutually can.
Yes,
Okay.
and I know you guys want to move on. I just want to make sure you have any information, any questions that come up, anything that comes into your mind, anything you need from me. You have easy access to reach out to me, and I will address issues as they come up to you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great night.
Yes, thank you very much.
Our next item on the agenda, the one that I'm sure most of the people titling in have been waiting for, is the review of the work on the exterior of the library scheduled for 2024. We approved it with funding approved from ARPA funds, and so the item tonight is to basically review how that's going. And Lori Dana is here from the Friends of the Richmond Free Library.
Trustee,
Trustees,
And-
I'm sorry, trustee, trustee.
but
You're also a trustee.
And just to,
Official.
just one more preface on this. So this sort of tees up the next two agenda items as well. Because the next two items are also related to repairs in the library. So we wanted to give sort of a review of what's already in the pipeline and happening and then move on to next steps. So I'll turn it over to Lori, who's much better versed than I.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Lori Dana is here to brief us.
thank you for the ARPA funding for the library. We are on schedule to do that work all this summer. Just to review, so we will be repairing all the wood that's rotting on the trim and the siding, and on the steeples and the main body of the building. And also, so that work will start in May. And then the painters are scheduled to come in September after the wood is done and paint the building finally after 9 years of being painted.
And we're going with pink this time, correct?
But no, we are keeping the same color palette on the building. We had a great pre-construction meeting with Rebecca and Alex, who's our contractor, and Jay, who will be the owner's rep, and Josh was there and talked through a lot of the just scheduling for this summer. Hopefully, we may have to close the library for a day or maybe two when they're working over the entrance. We had a discussion with Alex about actually enclosing that in plastic, the entrance of it. The painters will be doing all of the hazard mitigation work. We don't know there's lead. We're assuming there's lead, so they're gonna be
You pretty
doing
much
all
have
of
to.
that.
Yeah.
They're gonna be covering all of the grass around the building and using all the masks and all the special equipment that they're required to do. And Jay is aware of that, so he'll be checking on that.
It weirds me out that there's another J we should pipe.
Jay LeBear, who is our owner, yeah. So, do you have any questions?
Any questions on this line item? Jeff?
I'll note something that, something that people might not be aware of is the colors scheme that's on there now is the original color scheme from when
It is not the original color scheme.
It was what was there at the turn of the century. So like the way, where that color scheme came from was, when the smaller of the two towers was painted as an exercise. The paint chip was taken off it, and that was the bottom color.
It was actually dark brown when it was originally painted, and there is paint, that dark brown paint under all the layers.
So it probably was, I mean.
That was
in
probably the
1879.
1879 was when the building was built. Yeah, yeah. So if I can move on to the next item.
Well, we just need to properly introduce it. The second item that Lori is referring to has to do with, this one does require a motion. Consideration of approving and designating a funding source for tree removal and pruning at the Richmond Free Library. There is information about this in the packet, both from Lori and from our tree warden, Caitlin Littlefield. And Lori will be going into detail about this, but we have a couple different prices that we have been given from various tree removal and pruners. And then we have the option, once we know what it is we're approving, whether we want to spend Town Center Reserve Fund dollars or ARPA dollars for this. So with that said, Lori, please
Okay.
tell us all about this.
So as part of that pre-construction meeting, the painter and the builder both requested that trees be trimmed back, because some of them are actually touching the building and some of them are so close that they're not going to be able to get the lift truck in. And then that resulted in Josh saying, oh, Caitlin has been working on a proposal. Caitlin Littlefield, who's the tree warden, has been working on a proposal to trim trees around the library. There's also some ash trees in the back that she would like to remove because of the ash borer issues. So there are a lot of there were already issues about the trees beyond what the painter and the builder saw. So Caitlin and Alex, who's the contractor, and I and Rebecca walked the property and looked at all the trees. We made some additional requests beyond what Caitlin had asked for in terms of taking out the crabapple tree that's in the front, which, because of where the sewer pipes are in the front of that lawn, means you can't get a lift truck close to the building. So there's some other issues. Caitlin, Alex suggested a fourth free company to give us a bid. So now we have 4 bids.
Okay.
Acer, which is the new company, was definitely the lowest bid of the 4.
That's the
And they-
$5,000 one, right?
That's the $5,000 one. And they actually included all of the extras. The other 3 we would have had to go back because they didn't have the crabapple tree and some other things. So, Caitlin's recommendation, she can't be here because she's at a conservation conference out of state. So, she said, I'm doing my tree work by going to this conference. So she recommended that we go with Acer. The contractor that we're using for the work has also worked with Acer before. They're out of Waterbury, so they're a local company, but they have the International Society of Arboriculture certification, which Caitlin thought was important. So we're asking for you to approve $5,000 out of either the town center fund or the ARPA money. And I don't know. I mean, Josh, I think you felt like ARPA might make sense because the rest of the money is coming from ARPA, but
And ARPA has a clear sunset on it. We've still got about $200,000 unallocated.
And
And the project last summer was paid for with ARPA, and the project for this summer is being paid for with ARPA. So that would be my thought, but the board can take whatever direction they'd like.
Jeff.
So thank you for doing this. Both projects are necessary. I'm really looking forward to getting rid of the yew trees in front of the
yes.
foundation, because it's actually a spectacular foundation. It's an attractive foundation. I do have opinions on this. these projects, particularly the painting project, is something we're gonna need to do periodically. And I would allocate, if it's not in the capital plan, we might think about it being in the capital plan. It's $100,000 to paint the building. And my guess is it'll be every 10 years is gonna need it, you know, so that's something to keep in mind. And with that in mind, I see this as being maintenance work. Not, you know, long-term capital investment, which is more what ARPA is for. So my preference would be to take it out of the town center fund as part of our maintenance expense, which I see the town center fund, that's the purpose of the town center fund is to deal with maintenance on both of our buildings.
I just want to be clear that the $150,000 for the woodwork and painting is,
That's already.
it's already been, okay.
That's
So
already
you're
been
going,
approved. I
I just want to make
understand
sure
that.
we're talking about the
I
5,000.
made the same point then, and
Okay.
I didn't win that.
I just want to make sure we're only talking about the 5,000.
We're only
Fair point.
talking about
Okay.
5,000, which
Yeah.
seems like a small amount of money, and it's, you know, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it one way or the other. But I think we need to get used to spending money on maintenance, and this is a maintenance.
I agreed, yeah. Okay, so I'm agnostic personally as to whether we spend it out of town center or ARPA. I can see points to be made for both. Lisa, Bard, we just heard from Jeff.
Likewise, I mean, it needs to be done. It's a good expense, you know, there's no questions. I think whatever the most convenient or appropriate place to take the money from is fine with me.
I don't have a strong opinion. My only thought would be if, you know, how subscribed is the remaining ARPA funds. If we are at risk of having stuff left on the table, then I'd say let's use ARPA funds. If we're not at risk, I'd say let's use town center.
Right now, we've got about 200,000 slightly over that's not been committed to anything, and we do, of course, have a ticking clock. We don't know how much we're going to wind up spending on recreation. We could wind up with considerably more, or if recreation items at Browns Court, if we go that way, wind up coming in more expensive, we could spend some of that. A lot of unknowns, but right now, going purely by what we have officially allocated, we have about 200,000, right?
Well, in my guess, no matter what happens tomorrow with the vote, you could spend some money on this building, you know, so just something to keep in mind.
My suggestion is whoever makes the motion can choose.
So I'll do that. Why not? Nobody else has an opinion, but I do.
I
I'm,
better keep our powder dry for.
there you go. I don't need to anymore. I moved
We
to
know where you
approve I moved to approve entering into an agreement with Acer Tree Company for tree pruning and removal work at the library as presented in an amount not to exceed $5,000 to be funded with funds from the town center reserve fund.
Okay,
I'll second. Oh,
okay, so we have a motion made by Jeff Ford, seconded by Lisa Miller, to approve entering into an agreement with Acer Tree Company for tree pruning and removal work at the library as presented in an amount not to exceed $5,000 to be funded with funds from the Town Center Reserve Fund. Is there any further discussion? Any questions from the public? Okay, seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bard, aye. Jeff, aye.
And Jay, aye. Now, for those of you who tune in for all Lori all the time, we have yet another item for you. Lori, can you tell us about the U.S. Treasury Capital Project Fund for Libraries grant and the Public Facilities Preservation Initiative grant?
Okay. So this is, these two grants are being administered by the Vermont Department of Libraries. They are both federal money, the first of which is federal ARPA money. The $16.4 million that came to Vermont as part of 10 billion that was allocated to libraries nationally. This is the grant that is due actually March 12th. So Rebecca and I and the trustees will be looking for approval from you to apply for this grant. It is going to be actually, the final signer of the grant is once again, of course, the town of Richmond, because this is we're intending to ask for the money for the building. Let's see. The stated goal of this money is to improve access to high-speed internet for our patrons. However, the Department of Libraries is taking a very broad view, I would say, and including things like repairing your roof and making sure your building, I mean, probably the wood project would have qualified because if you don't have a building, then you don't have access to high-speed internet. And that's sort of the way that they're looking at this. The applications are due in March. They intend to make the awards in the early summer. I will be surprised if they make that deadline, quite honestly, but you know, that's what they say. And of course, the funds, like our ARPA funds, have to be spent by the end of December 2026.
Allocated by the end.
Allocated, yeah. So Rebecca and I were on a call today with the new grant administrator staff, which might have changed slightly what we intend to apply for, or how we intend to apply for it. Our original thinking was that we would apply for funding to repair the front steps on the library, which have been repaired now 3 times. They do not meet code. They are an official egress if they're in case of a fire from the building, because they're an exit from the community room on the 2nd floor and from the library's, the stacks area on the 1st floor, should there be a fire. So we have an estimate to do it to redo the steps would require an engineering study because we think it's rubble and not a cement foundation. We're not really sure what's under there.
Jimmy Hoffa.
Might be, you never know. And in thinking about the look of the library and the fact that that stonework on those steps matches the foundation, we probably would like to restore it historically instead of just building a regular cement stairway, since it is a pretty big
Yeah, it's big.
feature on that building. We have an estimate from Alex of about $80,000. 80,000, yes, to do it this way. So that would be one of the projects. It would be great to get it grant funded. The second was that whether or not the bond passes, putting a new handicap ramp from the parking lot into the library, that small portion of that plan makes a whole lot of sense in terms of safety, in terms of the number of people who use that entrance from the parking lot. And it's not just people who have handicap stickers, it's parents with strollers, and it's people bringing stuff in for a birthday party in the community room. It's a lot of things that happen. So when I pulled out the numbers from the 400 item spreadsheet that related to that library, it comes up to about $115,000. It would, if the bond passed, it would change how we would write the grant, but we are tempted to put it in the grant as money that could come out of the bond, should it pass anyway. And now we're thinking that we maybe should be putting in the roof repair that we have an estimate for, that's another $110,000 to do the repair of both the steeple slate and the broad roof slate. I think we have a $235,000 total slate replacement estimate, but the 3 slate people who have looked at it have said most of the roof is in good shape if we replace the slate that's damaged, and maybe did that every 3 years, keep replacing the damaged slates, it would be a lot less. And actually the slate, when Alex was at the library last year, they went up on the lift and kind of took a closer look at the slate that was on the roof instead of just looking at it from the ground. So, Rebecca and I, we're gonna work on the grant, but since the deadline is March 12th, I don't know quite how to phrase my request.
Okay.
I guess my request is that approval. Okay, I need to do the second grant first because so the second grant, which is not open yet, but they intend to open it in the fall, is another $10 million. And that is HUD money. And that was money that Senator Leahy got into the appropriations as his last CDS, congressionally directed spending for
Earmark.
an earmark, correct. The HUD money is specifically saying rural, small public libraries, which, I mean, based on Rebecca and I's reading, probably would be less likely to be money that we would get. We had originally thought about asking for the roof money there. But in talking and hearing questions and being on these calls, theoretically, we will know if we got the first grant before the second grant application is open. And we could at that time say, you know.
Well, I think applying for both of these is clearly, you know, regardless what our chances are, you don't get something if you don't ask for it.
Right.
And so we have two motions that basically, because as you said, we, at the end of the day, we are the people applying. There's a motion for applying for the U.S. Treasury Capital Grant Project Fund for the stairs and ramp. And there is a motion for the Public Facilities Preservation Initiative grant to repair the roof. And so if and when people wish to make the motion, we do have those ready. Bart.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Bart, I'd like to move to approve the application for the U.S. Treasury Capital Projects Fund for Libraries Grant to move the library's access ramp and rebuild the library's front stairs.
Okay, this is David. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Bart Hill, seconded by Mr. David Sanders, to move to apply for the U.S. Treasury Capital Projects Fund for Libraries Grant to move the library's handicap ramp and rebuild the library's front stairs. Jeff?
So a question, Lori, so how much time did it take you to apply for these grants?
Well, since it's an 18-page application when it's printed out, and Rebecca and I have each taken parts of it and we're working on it. We haven't finished it yet. I have language, she has language, and it asks for an amazing amount of data from the library about populations and patrons and, you know, hours and staffing and
So
it's
I would point out that,
not an easy grant.
and a lot of the ones that we hope to use for the town center building are not easy grants as well. You know, I would point out that one of the questions that we've received is how come we haven't, you know, why haven't we secured grant funding to do this project? This town center fund project, of which part of this grant would apply towards one aspect of the project that we're proposing. And the answer to that is the 18 pages of questions that Lori had to go through for this particular grant. We've got many. You know, this is somewhat off topic, but the reason why the town center committee has not gone whole hog into grant writing is because we've been busy creating the project and trying to communicate what that project is. So that's the answer to that question, and I really appreciate the work that the trustees have done to do this.
Oh, I didn't say that this grant is not a matching grant. It is a reimbursement grant. So we would be spending the money and being reimbursed.
Got it.
Okay.
And we should have money in the town center fund to do that.
Any further discussion on the first motion? Okay, again, the motion is to approve applying for the U.S. Treasury Capital Project Fund for Libraries Grant to move the library's handicap ramp and rebuild the library's front stairs. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jeff, aye. David, aye.
And Jay, aye.
Okay.
I move to apply for the Public Facilities Preservation Initiative Grant to repair the library roof.
This is Bart, I will second that.
Okie dokie, we have a motion from Jeff Forward, seconded by Bart Hill, to move to apply for the Public Facilities Preservation Initiative Grant to repair the library roof. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Lori, thank you so much for all the work you
Thank
put in on this item and the other items. And
Thank you all.
I know that being a trustee is like the ultimate glamour position,
It is.
but you don't let it go to your head, you know, and I respect that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is preparations for this eclipse that's apparently coming up. I haven't heard anything.
People in the dark about that.
That's right.
We'll
Although-
shed some light on it.
The eclipse is currently scheduled to take place on April 8th. We are,
Chance we can postpone it.
well, yeah, that's, some people have said this time isn't convenient. Can we move it to the weekend? But it's gonna-
In the afternoon.
It's gonna run, the eclipse goes from 2:14 PM till 4:37 PM. Totality is around 3:30. We have an email list for business owners to remind them that the eclipse will hypothetically bring many people to Vermont and they may want to do extended hours. On that subject, I was in Hopkinsville, Kentucky.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was too, during the last eclipse. My father-in-law, we picked my father-in-law up in Dayton, Ohio, and drove to the point of maximum totality, which was Hopkinsville. And it was an absolute madhouse, which, I mean, and the restaurateurs had lines out the door. Now, we are not specifically here in Richmond. We're in the path of totality, but we're not the maximum path. That said, though, there could be people coming here who may be from not around here and may be looking for a meal on Sunday night. So it's, you know, it might be something that our local restaurants would want to stay open later. So we just want to remind them of that. We have notified the chairs of the Andrews Committee, Forest Committee, and the Trails Committee to develop a plan for closing trails because, as we know, mud season is the thing. Somebody coming here from Phoenix to visit the eclipse may not realize that. And so we need to make sure people know which trails they can and cannot use. We need to monitor conditions at Volunteers Green and basically determine if and communicate if the park road and parking beyond the park entrance will even be open on April 8th. We expect to have one police officer at Volunteers Green during the eclipse hours. I've gotten several questions from people about the restroom building, which, as you know, took several hits during the floods. It is not currently operational, but it should be operational by April 8th. We've also ordered 2 extra porta potties. Knock on wood, that'll be enough in case a large crowd gathers. The police will be patrolling other roads with open vistas to monitor parking on the shoulders of the roads and ensure that roads remain passable. Areas of focus will be West White Hill, Canyon Road, party at David's house, Jericho Road, Browns Court, and Route 2. Town offices will close at noon April 8th so that our employees aren't trapped here by total traffic jams if that should happen, and because they want to see the eclipse too. Viewing glasses. This is a point of special concern for me. The library has 225 glasses to protect your eyes during the eclipse. They will be distributing them at an educational event on March 23rd. Any glasses left over will be available first come, first serve. 225 is going to go fast. The town also has 225 glasses that Linda Parent, our town clerk, will make available about a week prior to the eclipse. And the school has enough glasses for all students and staff. Right now, but this may not stay the case, you can go on Amazon.com and buy a pack of 10 glasses for about $10. They're going to be cardboard and Mylar, but they work. When I was in Hopkinsville, I came armed with plenty of them because I was prepared to drop this one in a sewer, tear that one in half. I mean, I had like 10 glasses for the 3 of us. And I saw people charging at that time $20 or more for a pair of Eclipse glasses. Mm-hmm. So I'm encouraging people in town not to wait until the day of to go, oh, I need glasses. Hopefully people know not to look directly at the eclipse, but I would encourage people now with a month to go till the event to make sure that you've got your eclipse glasses. Staring directly at an eclipse is very harmful to your eyes. Anything else?
You covered it.
What time is the event at the library? You know?
On March 23rd at 11, I believe.
With Richmond being in a valley,
Mhm.
half the town can see this valley and half the town can see that valley, and about 8% of the town actually have areas where they can see.
Right,
So I imagine areas like Volunteers Green, the Conant Farm along Route 2,
mhm.
maybe the east end of Route 2. People are thinking, oh, I'm gonna watch it there, and a lot of other people are going to be thinking that, so we should probably get ahead of this and do educational posts on Front Porch Forum about reminding people of safe ways to park and encouraging
Right.
landowners and.
Yeah, I completely expect that between the Wilston, between Paquette's and Conant Farm, that it's gonna be wall-to-wall cars, because that's the clearest, most open vista we've got.
Yeah.
I'm planning on watching it from home because my house faces south from on top of the hill. And so I'm hopefully not gonna have to go out in the madness. But yeah, we do need to make sure that, a lot of it comes down to emergency vehicles. Somebody has a heart attack and the ambulance can't get through because people left no travel space between their cars. That can't happen. So we do have to make sure that people know. And as I said, the police will be patrolling the roads to try to keep that from happening, but people will do what people will do.
Then if it's cloudy, all those people.
Oh,
go
yeah.
somewhere else.
Well, that is the thing. There are gonna be a lot of frankly upset people that it's cloudy, but we are not Arizona. We are Vermont.
It'll still get dark though. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be like fireworks in the fog. Still cool, but different. But was it, I think Rebecca was saying that she looked at it and like something like only 3 of the last 35 April 8ths have been sunny. So
Thank you, Rebecca.
the data is not great, but so hopefully with the 10% that it's sunny.
So I've heard, this is hard to imagine, but I've heard estimates of anywhere from 200,000 to 600,000 visitors to Vermont.
I think
The
that's,
population could double.
I know the population could double. That's just an amazing.
well, there
thing.
will be people in New York City who are not willing to settle for 85% totality. They're gonna want to see the real deal.
Mhm.
And there's money to be made from those people.
Coin drop. Just saying. You pay for the town center with a coin. They're rich.
It reminds me of the Grateful Dead concert in 1993 where
Tailgate.
people parked on
Mm,
the interstate.
Miles of
Yeah.
dead Volkswagens. on the
Well,
side of the interstate.
that's one of the words of wisdom and advice from the previous eclipse was people said that out west, they were just parking on the interstate, stopping their cars, getting out of the cars, middle of traffic, watching the eclipse.
Mhm.
And then all of a sudden it was like leaving a rock concert where everybody's getting back on the highway. So there's, so I think the state emergency services are sort of on alert, making sure that if something happens, they're ready to go. So that could be, it's gonna be a scene.
So the dead are gonna play at this?
Yeah. Volunteer green.
No, we got Pink Floyd. We're going the right way. We're gonna match the song to the event, like,
Yeah, but I
there
don't
you
care
go,
if it's
see?
cloudy then.
Yeah.
We're making sure that we get this lined up.
Well, if we see it, it'll be my third. When I was a kid, my father, who was a physics professor at Virginia Tech, threw all of us into the car and drove all the way to Prince Edward Island for the 1972 eclipse. And if you're familiar with the song "You're So Vain," that's the eclipse referenced in the song. So I was there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And we did watch it from the side of a road. That's just, and so did everybody. Prince Edward Island has lots of sides of the road, and that's where we parked. So,
Doesn't matter. Everybody's looking up.
yeah.
Hopefully.
And they probably sold a lot of potatoes that week.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we do need to do some education, and again, I would recommend that you just remind people, order your Eclipse glasses now, don't wait, because there are a lot out there, but you don't want to place an order and then find out that the merchant sold out and that you're not getting yours. So be safe. Okay, moving on to our next topic. Okay, we are at 7:55 PM, just FYI, and we have 6 items left. If we can get this meeting over by 9 o'clock, Josh and I will be very happy because there's town meeting and I have to be at the polls at 6:30 AM. Okay, so our next item is Hinesburg Shared Police Services. The Police Governance Committee met here last Thursday. It was Todd Odet from Anthony Cambridge, Marilee and Maggie from the Hinesburg Select Board, Josh, myself, and Bard. And in general, we all agree that things continue to go well, that we are interested in finding ways to continue to work together. There had been an article in the media, Josh was actually interviewed at one point, that summed up, that this is going on, and the article was a little bit wrong in one respect. The article had it that we're still looking at doing an actual legal union district. And right now, nobody in the meetings seemed to think that that was necessary, that contractual arrangements with reciprocity, shared chiefs, agreements to they monitor, they help us, we help them, is plenty, and that we don't really need, it's a lot of work, frankly, to get a charter for a new district. So otherwise, the articles in the media were more or less correct. Everybody seems to be happy. We're interested in it continuing further. And the big unknown right now is how long it's going to take us to get to full staffing. We have candidates in the pipeline. Questions?
I have a question about the administrative support. So
Yes, good point.
we
Yep.
have, what, 15 hours?
So-
She's retiring soon.
Yeah, so we have a budget for 15 hours. Diane, the last while, has worked about 10 hours a week. She recently reduced down to 5 hours a week, 1 day a week, and she's going to be retiring in a couple of months. So Anthony and I sat down and chatted with her about what she's doing for the next few months, making sure that we have a good handle on where she's wrapping up. And then the conversation was potentially, could we use our budget and then whatever Hinesburg has for a budget combined, hire an admin that's 30, 40 hours, depending on how much we have, and see if we could do something going forward. And there'd be another contract for administrative support. I think Chief Cambridge has at least one, if not two ideas of some people he could reach out to that might be interested in such a position.
Right. And thank you for mentioning that. It's right here in the memo, and I forgot to say it. Chief Cambridge has mentioned that he spends more time than he would like on routine administrative detail. And we don't know, we thought, well, we could post it as a full-time position for somebody who wants benefits, but then maybe there's only people who want to do 20 to 30 hours a week. We could post it as a part-time position, but then have a lack of candidates because they want full-time and benefits. So the obvious answer was to post two positions and see what kind of candidates you get. And if and hire for, if the best fit is somebody who wants to do 30, we will fill them into that position and not fill the full-time. But right now, yeah, I think that it makes all the sense in the world to, there are times during the week that Anthony is the only officer on duty. And we don't need to be tying him up with routine administrative stuff.
So would this person be our employee, Richmond employee?
It kind of depends, I think, on how we would structure it. So if we're going to split it, the way I would envision doing it is they're one town's employee with a contract to get paid back like we're doing with the chief right now. We did have a situation a couple of years ago where we shared a zoning administrative officer with Hinesburg. And I thought it was Hinesburg. They did, and then we switched to Huntington afterwards. It was either way. So she had 20 hours a week here that she was paid for and 20 hours a week in Hinesburg. She got benefits from Hinesburg, which she had to pay an exorbitant amount of that because she wasn't full time. So I think it would be logistically better if they were just through one town and then the other town just basically paid 50% of total compensation.
I agree.
So I'm fine with any of those as long as it's a 50-50 arrangement with Hinesburg.
Yeah.
Similarly, what we're doing with the chief services.
Yeah, having an admin would make it possible, among other things, to apply for grants that right now we just simply don't have the time.
Yeah, right.
And there are grants out there for various things.
So I would only add, there was an overt conversation about like this idea of a shared municipal district that isn't like necessarily dead, but it goes on the shelf. There seemed to be no short-term appetite for it, and maybe not a short-term need for it at some point in the future. Maybe. I think the folks in Hinesburg were conspicuously cool to the idea, saying, well, it's working pretty well the way it is. So, and it's a fair amount of work to go down that path. And so what's the investment and what's the return on investment to go down that path? And it seems plausible to keep doing what we're doing if nobody has a problem with it. It's working well for both our town, their town, and the citizens and the officers and the chief. If we can just keep this going,
Right.
that's, I think, our at least near to medium term intent.
Yeah, and to add,
Right, it's important to get admin help.
Right.
So I think chief doing paperwork is taking up more of his time.
Right.
I think, wearing him out.
and right now we have an annual contract that would be subject to renewal at the end of June, right? Todd Oda, the town manager of Hinesburg, pointed out 2 meetings back that it would be a lot easier budgeting if it was not a 1-year contract, because it's hard to budget when the contract might end part with your fiscal year and you're left holding the bag. So I would like to see us, once we're staffed, looking at either a 2, 3, or 4-year contract, not too long, but long enough that both towns can budget accordingly.
It has a lot of stability too, I think, which is a good thing. Yeah.
Great, sounds like it's going well.
Connie's got her hand up.
Connie,
I just want to remind you that if you do look at a 30-hour position, we do not prorate the benefits. So you could have a 30-hour a week person on a $30,000 family health plan. The leave time is prorated based on number of hours, but any of the insurances are 90% now of the health insurance.
right, but if it's a Hinesburg employee and we're just chipping in, it would be based on how they do things, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, so I think Connie raises a good point, but that's part of the question about who's going to show up. Are they showing up for insurance, or does it not matter?
Mhm.
And it kind of depends on sort of who shows up. But, without continuing to talk about the anomaly that we are in the first world of having not the same kind of health insurance coverage that other countries have, we are kind of facing this challenge of expensive health insurance that people need, because that's how you get healthcare. And I don't think we should necessarily dance away from it, even though it is costly. Your point that, we might end up be spending close to the total salary on insurance and benefits. So that's the reality, I guess.
Unless we find somebody who will agree to be paid McDonald's gift certificates. Do you remember when I was a kid, that McDonald's convinced most of America that the way to tip your pool boy and your mailman and stuff was with a 50-cent McDonald's gift coupon?
I always got them when I was a paper boy.
Yeah. I don't think we're gonna find somebody who will take this, though. Okay. Seeing no other hands up, I guess we should move to our next agenda item. This next agenda item, I'm not skipping anything, am I? Is purchase of a roadside mower. For those of you who have not seen such thing, they're those big beasts that you can, from a truck, basically reach over, mow the bank, mow slopes and things. It turns out they're not free. We had in the capital plan to purchase in fiscal year 24 a roadside mower for $100,000 from the Highway Reserve Fund. And the quote we've gotten after trade-in is $135,000. The total amount remaining in the fund is $120,000. I'm rounding. So that leaves just shy of $15,000 to cover with other funds. Connie Bona, who's on the call, and Josh suggested that we should overspend the highway budget by that amount of money. That's just shy of $15,000, which will further reduce what restricted funds are left over at the end of fiscal year. The auditors were already going to have to make an adjustment between the unassigned, i.e. non-highway, unassigned funds and restricted funds, because we basically used up all the highway restricted funds. On the other hand, on a positive note, our conspicuous lack of snow and ice this year has meant that our gravel and salt budget has been much lower. Expenditures have been much lower than they had been. Connie, is there anything, or Josh, anything further you want to say about this proposed arrangement?
No,
I think it's the only option. I mean, we're already putting what, 500,000 toward the fiscal year 24 budget in restricted funds, and now we have a $500,000 price tag on FEMA. So that reduces our cash flow by about $1 million. But it's the only thing we can do. And as you said, what'll happen at the end of the year, you cannot have a negative restricted fund balance. So then
Right.
they would dip into the unassigned funds, and then when we get paid from FEMA, it'll build up again.
Right. Now, I'm just gonna ask David, you seem to have a source for all manner of motor powered vehicles. Do you know where we can get like a sweet roadside mower cheap?
If they did, I'd be buying it. I don't wanna, say this specifically about the roadside mower, but I do wanna just point out, 20 years ago, Richmond's highways were famous for not good reasons. And the town was spending a fortune maintaining old equipment that was always breaking down. And Pete and Connie and the town manager, both Jeff and Josh, sharpened their pencils and realized that investing in decent equipment and spending wisely in highway gave us a bigger return for our investment dollars, and that's paid off handsomely now. Richmond's famous for very well maintained roads, and our highway department runs a really streamlined operation. And you know, I'm not making light of it, but you've saved 10,000 here, 10,000 there, that adds up to real money. So I'm very confident that this is the prudent way to go. And I guess, are you ready for a motion?
Sure.
Okay. So I move to approve purchase order 4784 to Pete's Equipment Sales and Rentals, not Pete Goslin, but Pete's Equipment Sales and Rentals in the amount of $135,000 for the purchase of a new roadside mower with $120,273 funded by the Highway Capital Reserve Fund and $14,727 funded by the General Highway Fund.
This is Lisa, I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Lisa Miller, to approve purchase order 4784 to Pete's Equipment Sales and Rentals in the amount of $135,000 for the purchase of a new roadside mower with $120,273 funded by the Highway Capital Reserve Fund and $14,727 funded by the General Highway Fund. Is there any further discussion?
Also, I just wanted to point out, when people hear roadside mower, they might think that it's finished mowing, like golf course mowing.
Oh, no.
This is for growth coming up in the right of way. So it's a roadside mower, but it's more like a roadside brush hog because it's cutting down saplings, small trees, brush. And that's so that you have a nice clear line of sight.
Right.
Right of way is maintained, open, clear.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Bard, I.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Thank you all. Our next agenda item relates to the fiscal year 25 capital plan. This is on the agenda for review and comment by the select board. If there are no suggested changes, we can proceed with setting a hearing date for approval of the capital plan, which has to have 15 days notice. The earliest date that could be set would be Monday, April 1st, 2024. So I'm going to pass the ball on this to Connie and Josh because they're the ones who worked on developing it.
And I'll let Connie go through a high level review. One note is we will change it based on the expense that was just approved, because that was in there for 100. So we'll adjust that when we come back for the hearing on April 1st. Other than that, Connie, if you want to give a review of sort of where we're at with this, go ahead.
I'm really thrilled with the way this is working. Unfortunately, we have seen a tremendous amount of cost increases in equipment, so the numbers are definitely going to change from year to year. As a result of the mower, the current draft that's going forward impacts what we have to put in fiscal year 24, 26, 27, 28. If we increase that by 5,000 every year as a contribution to the reserve, it'll put us back on track for not having any negative years. It looks good to me. I've just plugged some numbers in for the town center. If the vote goes through with a suggestion, if you look at it at the spreadsheet, you'll notice that I'm pulling some money from the town center rent so that people don't think that it would be 100% being paid with taxes. Some of that will be coming from the rent itself.
So this is
I think it's further down, Josh.
Well, this is the highway equipment,
Oh,
right?
sorry, yes, yep.
Yeah, this
Right, so if
unfortunately,
you were to scroll down a little more to the bottom of that, where you're seeing that the 220,000, you got 218,000, and then you have 4 years of 220,000. That's going to have to go up to 225,000 and maybe a little more to keep us in the black in that reserve. But this is a classic case of how it is working. We're going to spend that reserve. Highway will be spent down in 1 year, whereas fire will be high and then spent down in another year. So it all comes together nicely on the summary pages.
and then Connie, you're next. Were you going to town center, bond, and payback? Is that what I heard you going to?
Yep, that's further down,
Town center. I'll get there.
right there.
This one. So.
Yeah.
You think you put in town center alone here? Estimated numbers, of course, 725,000 per year, roughly, starting in 26. And I
Right.
think you,
Yeah, that's a big jump, but at least some of it we can put back into rent and still afford to take or use the rent to put towards the loan and still have money to pay for regular maintenance and utilities that we have to use. On the Word document, although this is a 5-year plan, as you can see, we carried out 15 years, so we can see a good 2 or 3 cycles on things based on their life expectancy. And as David was saying earlier, I mean, Pete has his really fine-tuned, and we have found even going 1 year over on a dump truck makes a significant difference in the amount of money we pay on repairs. And that actually happened last year because COVID, we were behind schedule, but we're caught up now. So although this says 5-year capital plan, I do have in there for 15. Even like if you were to go down to fire or up to fire, I guess, Josh, you will see, so like the fire department, air packs, I'll wait till you get there.
you want in the narrative, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm going. Okay. Just wanted to make sure I was in the right section.
So, well, there's a classic, right? Okay, air tanks is good. Right there is good. So this
Okay.
goes well beyond a 5-year plan, but what I've done is I've put in enough to show the total air packs that we have to have on hand at all times and in which years we'll have to be buying them. Unfortunately, they don't all fall so that we're doing one each year. They are bunched up at times, and that's due to we've gotten some good deals at times that saved us money. So just because I don't want anybody looking saying, well, it's a 5-year plan, why are you showing me 15? Because that 15 covers the number that we need to have in inventory.
Okay.
Okay. Jeff?
So Connie, how much do you have in the town center reserve fund for maintenance? From rent.
I think
Resolve?
I think it's 10,000 for building maintenance, or we'd have, yeah.
Is maintenance on the capital plan, Connie?
Yes, yeah,
Let me get there then.
right there.
Oh, building
So
maintenance.
for building maintenance, we allow for up to 15,000, but we don't necessarily spend the 15,000 a year.
Well, I'll make 2 points relative to that. One is that's nowhere near enough.
I agree.
For either, remember, this is not just the town center, it's the town center and library. And we just approved spending $100,000 on painting the library alone, which is for over 10 years, that's $10,000 each year. So, I'm not suggesting you think this through right now, but in the future, I think you ought to think that through a little bit more carefully. I think the town center, my recollection, Lori, is we thought maybe half of that amount, half of the rent, or so to be put aside for maintenance would not be unreasonable. If the town center bond does not pass, you will be spending a much more on maintenance coming up,
Mhm.
much more on maintenance coming up. So, that's something to keep in mind.
Or I
So
think,
Jeff,
well, let me just, I think there might be, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's sort of two things to think about with maintenance. I think one is to the point earlier about painting. We should assume we're gonna spend $100,000 plus every 10 years to do painting. And we should probably add that as a line here, painting.
Yes, I agree.
Carpet replacement. And the way I think the way we've always sort of done maintenance, Connie, is that sort of for ongoing things that kind of come up during the year. So that wouldn't necessarily be painting or carpet replacement. It would be more, oh, the heater broke. So
correct.
you probably need to
So
refine
where
that
you
number.
would go with that, Josh, would be if you look at the planned library and town center renovations. That could probably fall in there, like when are carpets replaced, when is painting happening, bigger
Better pla-
projects. But the building maintenance line is strictly for repairs that had to be done during the year.
Okay.
So, and I would also point out, if the bond does not pass tomorrow, then all of that goes up like a lot. It would be, to my mind, it would be irresponsible not to address the flood mitigation measures. The roof on the post office needs to be replaced as
No
soon
matter
as you
what,
can get
right.
to it.
Yep.
And if you replace that, there's 1 inch of insulation in that roof. So, to do that, you need to fix to add insulation, you need to also fix the rafters. So whatever it is, I think if the bond does not pass tomorrow, there's going to be quite a bit of work trying to figure out what projects need to happen and when, and they're not going to be cheap.
Yeah, and there's some things like the issue with the ventilation and the windows. You can't do just one.
Can't do one without the other. So, they're not going to be cheap. So, and I'm not sure who will do that work.
Well, as you said, coin drop during the eclipse.
Yeah, I think that would work. We could probably.
So I'm just thinking for clarity here, when somebody reads the building maintenance line, as we just did, and Jeff observes properly, well, that's not enough for this other stuff, that we should be prepared for a deeper dive to put a pin on this in this for tonight,
Mhm.
but a deeper dive on what are all these maintenance things looking like? And it's almost like an asset management plan for each building, right? Like what has to be done, the lifespan of HVAC, of
Absolutely.
paints,
Absolutely.
to be thinking ahead. So that's a thing that I think we should dive into, again, not tonight, but at the hearing and be prepared for that. And maybe to modify some of these figures. And then my other observation is the town center rents coming in are constant over how many years here? 15 years? That row all the way across?
Yeah.
The rents ever go up?
Post office rent
Yes.
will go. So yeah, we
Right.
should find that.
Okay.
And
So
that's
right
the
now,
risk.
I'm going by just what our contract is for the next few years.
Yeah.
We don't know what that'll be in a new contract.
So my understanding of the post office is when we originally signed a lease with the post office, it was $50,000 for 20 years. $50,000 a year for 20 years. And at that time, that paid for the bond that renovated the building as it is today. Okay, it offset no maintenance, and there wasn't any maintenance during that time, but it paid for the bond to do that. After that 20 years, we were able to renegotiate, and it's been 30, not quite 30 years now, right? Was in 92 or so, 93, so it's about 30 years ago is when we did the original lease with the post office. And now it's almost $100,000. And what they like to do is they like to do long-term leases. So I agree with you that my recollection is it was renewals on every 5 years after that 20-year term. I don't know if they'd be interested in doing a longer term lease. I think longer is better. But I think you're right. I think it will go up.
Mhm.
The other, so it's about $100,000 for the post office right now. And the extra 13 is from MMCTV.
Okay. So, any other questions about the plan itself? Okay, this did come up at the candidate forum for the select board, open select board seat. And it just serves to remind me that regardless of who wins the, that open select board seat, we will need to do some work to make sure that person is brought up to speed, because it's not a quick and dirty topic. It's something that's pretty involved. We do need to have a hearing on it for the public. We have to do 15 days notice. Josh has looked at his calendar and has determined that the earliest date we can do that would be Monday, April 1st, April Fool's Day, 2024. If the select board would like to push it out 2 more weeks or whatever, it's up to them. But we do have a draft motion in the packet.
Jay, this is David. I moved to set a hearing date for Monday, April 1st, 2024 for the fiscal year 25 capital plan.
This Bart, I will second that.
We have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill, to move to set a hearing date of Monday, April 1st, 2024 for the fiscal year 25 capital plan. Connie's hand is up. Connie, go ahead.
I guess my question is, between now and then, we'll know what happened with the bond vote. So this page would have to be reworked.
Unless, of course, it's a tie.
At the time.
I guess that's possible.
Please, that.
There's a recount and we'll be there all night long.
All odd residents.
There's been,
Have the option of breaking ties.
I don't think so. I do know that once, since I moved to Vermont in 1998, there was a school board budget in the Northeast Kingdom that had to go to a revote because it did finish in a tie.
Wow.
It was like one of these towns with like 300 voters, period.
Yeah.
We did a legislative race in Richmond that was decided on 4 votes on town meeting day, and the recount whittled it down to 2 votes.
Well, our justice of the peace, right, and we had we didn't get enough declared candidates for the 12 seats, so we had a write-in for the remaining one. We had to count the write-ins at least 3 times before the margin didn't change, but the numbers kept changing. But it was always this person had 2 more than that person.
Chance.
And we were just so fried by the end. We're like, oh God. Anyway, yes. Knock on wood, there will not be a tie, and we will at least be spared that.
So, one question, substantive question here. So for Connie, depending on how the vote goes tomorrow, you might change this, at least one section of the plan significantly, right? So would you rather put this hearing date off until you change that? Once we set the date, it has to be what is in front of us,
Yes, I
right?
could see pushing it out to the April 15th meeting, just to give her more time.
Is that how you read that? I mean, so like tomorrow's significant.
It won't take me that long to make the change.
But when we vote on setting the date, it's the plan in front of us, not
Well,
whatever you change, isn't it?
so I think it'll be the plan once we set the warning out, and the warning would be next Wednesday, go in the paper, that'd give us the 15 days. So as long as the board's comfortable that we'll make the change based on the earlier budget item, and then we'll make some adjustments based on the bond vote tomorrow, then we'll finalize that, because then we do have to set that out for public review, and then we'll look at it April 1st, and then the board at that point, you guys have the option to accept it or make further changes. Or we could come back at the March 18th meeting with an updated version, and then it would just be probably the April 16th meeting when you come back for it. If you'd
And
wanna
as
review-
far as the town center goes, if the bond doesn't get approved, that still leaves us with the rent coming in to take care of things that have to be taken care of, not to the tune of $1 million, but there's money there to deal with things bigger than the $15,000 a year repair stuff.
And just to beat this horse to death here, is one of the things that the town center committee has been on our plate from the get-go, really, is to talk about maintenance. What kind of maintenance plan to have for this building and the library. building, because that's part of what's designated as the town center for the reserve fund. And I'll point out that we've actually done quite a bit at the town center, at the library. We've spent quite a bit of money fixing deferred maintenance. We have not done that for this building because we thought we might fix all of them at one shot. So it's just something to keep in mind that, that the money in the town center reserve fund, even if the bond gets approved, new buildings require maintenance too. And it's foolish to ignore them. That issue. So having enough money in the fund to do both preventative maintenance and maintaining the building to the way it's built is prudent in my mind.
I would only add, Jay, that there are other town buildings comparably or similarly situated, highway,
You're right.
fire. So if we thought inclusively, it would be good to move towards a better approach to maintenance to this building, but arguably we should take the same approach of building management and maintenance across on our whole portfolio of
And we
buildings.
do have a building assessments for the town center, the library, and firehouse. That was done by Breadloaf in 2018. So that's a good place to start. It's not necessarily the end all, things have changed since, but that's a good place to start.
What it's worth, we are not the only town struggling with whether to spend a lot of money on a building. Look at Jericho. They're trying to pay for replacing their whole highway garage. And it's been kind of contentious, so. People putting off maintenance and then finding the hard way that there's a price involved with that. It's not just Richmond, it happens everywhere. Okay, I'll repeat the motion. The motion is to set a hearing date of Monday, April 1st, 2024 for the fiscal year capital plan. Please state your name and your vote.
Are we satisfied that we can do what we?
Bonnie seems to be.
Okay.
Did we have was the motion made?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. Good.
David made it, Bart seconded it.
Lisa, aye.
Bard, aye.
Because I will not be here, once again, I'm going to abstain.
Okay,
David, I.
and Jay, aye. Well, you can be here, just
There, but I'll have no power.
Pay the door.
okay. Our next item relates to the brand new tax that the legislature had approved, the child care contribution tax. This was discussed at the last meeting when I was not here. If I understand correctly, the law calls for a total of, let's actually see here, 0.44% of the employee salary. And we the idea, I guess, originally was that the employer would pay 30.33 and the employee would pay 0.11, but we don't have to do it that way. Right?
Yeah, so each employer has the option of passing along 0.11% to the employer, to the employee, a maximum of 0.11, or the employee or the employer
You just
pay
pay
the full 0.44.
So that's really the question is, how do we want to split up the 0.44%? Do we want the employees to pay 0.11%, or do we want that number to be smaller or zero?
And looking at the scope, I put that, it's in the packet. Let me pull that up just to give some real numbers to this. 1 sec. Okay, so the total amount of wages or tax that we're looking at is about $5,800 over the course of a year, based on $1.3 million totally paid out to employees. So 0.33 would be about $4,400 that the town would be paying, and the town would pass along $1,400 to the employees.
Okay,
Connie might have more.
Connie has something.
To be clear, that's not per employee, that's total. There was a lot of chatter on MuniNet, what I was seeing on that was the majority of towns were just doing the 0.44 because they said the 0.11 just doesn't make sense administratively because you're having to put this in for every single employee for a very small amount.
Right,
Not that
that
that's a good reason, I'm just saying that it's a
Yeah.
very small amount spread over all our employees.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion I move to split the cost of 0.44% for the childcare contribution payroll tax between the town and employees, with the town paying 100% of that amount and the employees paying 0. Is there a
I'll
second?
second the motion,
Okay.
but then I have a question. So in the discussion phase of the motion,
Right.
just could you remind us, because I didn't see it here, Connie, how many employees are there total? Or even positions, whatever.
Well, the report I pulled up, and this was for calendar year 23, not our fiscal year, came up at about 60 between firefighters and regular employees.
And so that's part of the point, you know, for a firefighter who's working very few hours, who are being paid very few hours a year, it's very small. So even if you talk about the average cost per employee, it doesn't really represent many employees.
Yeah, and it's a nuisance administratively, to be honest, for a relatively small amount of money.
$1,500.
It'd be about $25 per employee if you divided it by 60. It'd probably be $4 for each fire department employee and more for others.
Yeah. Okay,
Well,
so
it would be all across the board, Josh, because like if you look at library, they have a lot of part-timers.
That's what I mean, like the
Sure.
fire department employees it'd probably be less than $1 for them. But then full-time employees would be paying more than 25, probably closer to 50 in some cases.
Okay, so we do have a motion made by me and seconded by Bard to move to split the cost of the 0.44% to the child care contribution payroll tax between the town and employees, with the town paying 100% and the employees paying 0. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none,
Wait.
please take. Go ahead.
I'm confused. You're saying
Town's
split the
gonna pay-
cost, but we're not splitting the cost. If it's 100%.
You're right. I will because I'm just quoting the motion. I move that the town of Richmond pay 100% of the child care contribution payroll tax between. Will you accept the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion now is I move that the town of Richmond will pay 100% of the child care contribution payroll tax. Okay, thank you, Connie. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bard, aye.
Jeff, I,
David, I.
And J.I. It is 8:33 p.m. and we have 2 agenda items left. This is doable.
want to exercise my.
Now, I do think, because Jeff has often commented how much he enjoys those 11:30 meeting times, that we could just handle these 2 items and then just sit here and chat for the next 2.5 hours.
No good. Or
Okay,
stay all
good.
night, go over cameras.
Okay, the second to last item is approval of liquor
All night at
licenses.
college.
We have some liquor license applications. Cumberland Farms is asking for a second-class license, which is beer and wine to be consumed off premises. Papa Mtgs is asking for a first class and outside consumption. First class is to serve beer and wine on site, and outside consumption is their patio. Richmond Market is looking for a second class license to sell beer and wine to be consumed off premises. Stone's Throw is looking for first class, serve it on site. Second class, sell it to take with, an outside consumption because they too have a patio. We do not have to address tobacco sales. Are there questions about any of these licenses? Lisa, you look perplexed.
I'm just thinking, Papa Mtgs really is a residential district. I mean, except for it.
Well, they've had the patio there for years. This,
I know, you
yeah.
know, I'm just thinking out
It
loud.
used to be, they had the market on the corner, Richmond Upholstery across the street,
Mhm.
Claudio Upholstery down the street, Harrington's further down the street, so residential, yeah, but.
But, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah,
So I move to approve second-class liquor licenses for Cumberland Farms of Vermont doing business as Cumberland Farms.
Jay, this is David, I'll second.
We have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sander, to move to approve a second-class liquor license for Cumberland Farms of VT doing business as Cumberland Farms. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bard, aye.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And J.I.
I move to approve a first-class liquor license and outside consumption license for LJM Enterprises doing business as Papa McGee's Pizza.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
We have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sander, to move to approve a first-class liquor license and outside consumption license for LJM Enterprises doing business as Papa McGee's Pizza. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Bart, I.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay, aye.
I move to approve a second-class liquor license for HAS Vermont doing business as the Richmond Market.
This is David. I'll second.
We have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sander, to move to approve a second-class liquor license for AGS Vermont doing business as the Richmond Market. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Bart, I.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay, aye.
As my final motion in this role, I move to approve a first-class liquor license, a second-class liquor license, and an outside consumption license for Pine Martins LLC doing business as Stone's Throw Pizza.
Jay, this is David. I'll second.
Did you want to do it, Lisa? Let Lisa do it. Okay, we have a motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by Lisa Miller, to move to approve a first-class liquor license, a second-class liquor license, and outside consumption license for Pine Martins LLC doing business as Stone's Throw Pizza. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, I.
Bart, I.
Jeff, aye.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. I would like to remind you, Jeff, that we do need a motion to adjourn at the end of the meeting, and if you're really nice, we'll let you make it.
Ooh,
Jeff's last.
That's a schlong.
Okay, our ultimate item prior to topics for next meeting's agenda and adjournment is review of advice from our town attorney and Vermont League of Cities and Towns regarding subcommittee meetings. For those watching at home, which is not many people right now except for Becky, or anybody watching this later, the question is, if a town committee says to a couple of their members, go off and research this and come back, do they have to warn that? And there has been advice from our attorney and advice from the Vermont League of Cities and Towns based on some court issues, a court case, which ultimately said that no one wants to make a mockery of the open meeting law by just splitting off into little subunits and conducting business there. And at the previous meeting that I was not at, Lisa, among other people, mentioned that, well, any time that a small group like that would meet, ultimately they do not have decision-making power, and they would have to come back to the committee as a whole. However, I think the other thing that we got was if the subcommittee is large enough to constitute a quorum of the body. So, for example, if we have a 9-member ACFC committee and they create a subcommittee of 5 members, that absolutely would have to be, even if it was declared a subcommittee, it would still have to be warned because it does constitute a quorum. Is there anything else we want to add? We do need to educate. Definitely we need to educate our town committees because there are a lot of people who, when they get on a committee, don't necessarily understand that open meeting law applies. There are a lot of committees that don't necessarily take action in the form of a motion. They just act by consensus. And while, we all want to get along and be collegial, there's laws. We have to do things the right way.
And there are times when you stumble into this innocently, like I could be taking my dogs for a walk in the park and I could bump into you and then we could bump into Bart and I might say, hey, Jay, what'd you think about that? Well, that's now an open meeting.
Right. So we just have to, again, we know not to discuss town business, but does every town committee member? We don't know. So we definitely have to do education and make sure people know what's expected of them when they're serving on the town committee.
One thing that we have added in the last couple of years is after we reappoint all the committees at the end of May, we send out a big reminder on open meeting law. And we've got a few bullet points that we refer to, and we refer to the Secretary of State's handbook on open meeting law, which is extremely helpful if there's ever any questions. That it's like a 10-page handbook. It answers most of them.
Right. But one
There
issue,
could be more outreach,
Right.
but I think by not requiring that we warn meetings of less than a quorum, it makes it a little more simple
Right.
for everybody.
I will just add one thing to that. We did within the last year have one town committee that generally did not seem to get open meeting law and was routinely conducting meetings via email, as it were, and did not know that was not okay. So a letter after we appoint committees is cool, but I think there at some point needs to be perhaps just call a meeting of committee heads and make sure that each committee chair does, clearly conveys that they understand it.
Something I'd like to add to that too is the ethics statement that everybody's supposed to sign.
Right.
That would be a great time for the chair to just circulate that. By the way, here's another 2 minutes.
Right.
This is what it means, sign it up.
And, you know, on the subject of the ethics, one issue that has VLCT kind of concerned is that the state is preparing to just take over ethics itself, establish an ethics board that makes policy. And because I think some towns just don't even bother. You know, they do things like having the town treasurer is the daughter of the select board chair and the niece of another member of the select board, and they see no issue with that. Because it's not widely followed, I think the state is just saying, you know, okay, fine, we'll do it.
This is fair.
So Jay, I think this all makes sense. It seems to me I think it's worth raising to the level of some kind of meeting or video, maybe record some training, like what are the key elements and a link to the guidelines. And I think it should certainly happen after town meeting, which is tomorrow, but maybe you're right. I think you were implying that maybe we do it after we redo the committees. And that's a rational time to do it. So maybe plan between now and then for a date, a time, and sort of the content, what we would do. Even maybe invite VLCT if they're able and willing.
Yeah, they do have staff. I do not know, because I don't have the institutional memory of the select board that some of y'all do. But have we ever gotten in trouble legally for violating open meeting law? I know there are up to $500 penalties for violating it if it gets that bad. But have we ever been reported to the state for?
Not while I've been on the board.
I'm not aware of that happening for select board or another committee or commission. but-
Yeah, I can tell you that, you know, I've lived in town for 45 years almost, and there have been times in the town history when we had 3 select board members instead of 5. And there were times that it felt like there was backroom deals, you know? You know, it's harder with 3. You can't have a subcommittee. when You've got 3, right? And, you know, and no ill will towards any of the previous select board meetings, but you can see how people could feel that way, not to the level of suing the town
Right.
per se, but you can see that. That said, you know, to me, you know, less than a quorum makes sense.
Right.
You know, it's a way to actually make government more efficient. And that's something that we get
Right.
called on a lot, you know, so.
Yeah. The reason I ask about being sued is because one of the reasons that this is even on our agenda is because of another town, the town of Norwich, which was sued and found, well, the town of Norwich spent $100,000 fighting the
I
issue
don't understand that.
and then said, okay, we'll warn these meetings. And I'm just like, exactly. What were they thinking? Why were they so hell bent on that it was worth $100,000 to not warn subcommittee meetings?
Spite.
That's probably the biggest question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on who brought the suit in.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
This is the guy that sued Easy Pass for $20.
yeah. Okay, so that is the last of our warrant agenda. Are there, actually, we need 2 sets of minutes to be approved. We had the minutes of February 20th, which I was not at, and we had the minutes from our special informational meeting on the 26th.
Jay, this is David. I'll move to approve the minutes of February 20th.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Jeff Ford, to approve the minutes of February 20th, 2024. Are there any corrections, additions, or deletions, or other comments? Okay, I couldn't comment on that one because I wasn't here. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay abstains. Next was a special informational meeting on the budget on the 26th.
Jay, this is David. I move to approve the minutes of the February 26th meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion for David Sanders, seconded by Jeff Ford, to approve the minutes of the February 26th meeting. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, aye.
Jeff, aye.
David, aye.
And Jay, aye. Okay, next is warrants and purchase orders, and I confess I don't recall.
No pursuit.
No purchase orders. Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the warrants? And are there any questions about the warrants?
Got a question. There's
Okay.
actually there's a purchase order signed already to, it's number 4864 to Hunger Mountain Construction Library. Why is the contingency on the purchase order as an item to be purchased?
Sure.
It's,
Yeah. I'm kind
those
of-
are informational, aren't they? When you put them in with the invoices.
Well, this is
So
an
it's
actual
pending
PO
on an approved purchase
is.
order,
with a number, so.
so it'd be in with the warrants.
Yeah, so it's, I didn't scan it super well, but yeah, we got the 15% contingency in there.
Yeah, it
Um,
just looks strange. I mean, if they're charging that, then why don't they just put it in their price? and
Well, so-
It's going towards.
I put it in there historically just because if they do end up going over on
Yep,
something,
right.
we don't have to come back and say, oh, we need another $1,000 for this and then redo the purchase order.
Yeah.
So ideally, we're not going to spend that 17,955.
Well, that's.
Right, this is
Why
nothing
would they?
charging us that. This is us authorizing.
This is just the authorization to spend that. And
Up to the not to exceed line, I think is key at the bottom.
yeah, which is got cut off on the scan, but that's the
Okay.
137,655, I think.
Okay, so there others are fixed price by quote and then there's a contingency. which is a percent.
Right.
Yeah, and I just did that so that otherwise we're gonna end up with, if there's 4 changes, we're gonna be doing it on the
Right.
updating the purchase order, it gets really messy.
But when, if and when, well, when Hunger Mountain bills us, their bill will be for total prices itemized. It's not going to be for the contingency.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
It's going to be for, well, we expected to spend 89,700, but who knew that shade of paint is in short supply. It cost us extra.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand for budgeting purposes, it just didn't want to just say, here it is, if you ever need it, it's on the table.
No, and we have a process with them where we check in every week or maybe 2 weeks on the on the project. And if they come across something, like I think the last item they came across was they had some additional wood rot.
I'm sure
And they
it's
said,
like
oh,
something,
it's
yeah.
gonna be an extra couple $1,000 that's in the contingency. So, and then I approved that through our town rep as well, Jay LeBaron.
Okay, just look, wasn't the way I've seen things done usually, not here,
Yep.
but elsewhere.
Okay, so any other questions? Okay, we need a motion.
Move to approve.
Is Bart, I'll second?
Have a motion to approve the purchase orders. Motion was made by David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill.
It's not purchase orders as well.
Warrants, I apologize. Thank you. Then we have a motion from David Sanders, seconded by Bart Hill to approve the warrants. Please state your name and your vote.
Lisa, aye.
Bart, I.
Jeff, I.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Items for next agenda.
We should talk about the bond vote.
Talk about the bond vote.
Town meeting wrap
I
up,
don't think we can wait.
I may or may not be here.
new organization,
New organization, yes, picking new chair and vice chair.
Eclipse update.
Ooh, yeah. And Jay, I'd really like to see us put some things in, some specific points in place to move towards an ethics review with employees and also the other items we talked about tonight. It's just awareness, open.
I would tend to agree with that, Lisa. I don't think that's a bad idea.
A lot smoother than trying to do this
Right.
and then do that.
We have been, there has been some commentary from voters
Mhm.
about what they see as a failure for a town body to follow the ethics policy. And my point of view about
Wow.
ethics policies, whether you agree with that person or not,
Okay.
my point of view on ethics policies is you need to be purer than pure. There's the old thing about Caesar's wife. Caesar's wife has to be above reproach because she's so visible. We are visible. We need to make sure that our actions do not run afoul because we thought, well, it was okay. The policies are there for a reason. And so I think it is good from time to time to review the ethics policy, say, is this really what it should be saying? How does this compare to the model policy? Now, we've already actually done that review, that the VLCT's model policy was looked at. But we also need to make sure that town bodies, town employees do more than just sign the thing without reading it, but that they actually read it. And some case studies of whether they're based on real life situations or whether they're based on just stuff that could happen, but some case studies of here's a situation where there would have been an ethical violation and here's what they should have done. Instead of just saying hypotheticals, I think sometimes case studies are a good way to go. So I think that is something
Yeah.
we should look at.
Yeah, there's obvious things that are violations and there's things that are kind of gray and people may not.
Right. And people thought, well, everybody does it that way. Well, just because everybody does it that way doesn't mean it's.
Yeah.
Maybe there could be 2 parallel sort of meetings / trainings on open public meeting and ethics, because they're kind of related.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I say something? The library, we have a calendar of topics that we do every year at the same time, and ethics and open meeting are always on our first meeting after our new person starts, and it's always a good reminder for the rest of us,
Yeah, I would agree.
you know, every year to just
Good idea.
look at the.
Right. So yeah, I think having a review, not just education, not just discussing how to do outreach to town committees and volunteers, but just making sure that we openly and freely discuss this with our new member. And to communicate to the voters that we take it seriously.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, we always do it at our co-weighers convention.
right,
Oh, one of you? How many cold wares are there?
2 right now.
We've got as many as 4.
We still don't have any
Can't
license,
talk about it.
right? We don't have any licensed legal municipal scales.
Yeah, so-
If Cole makes a big comeback, we'll need to buy some scales. Right now, no
West
town.
Virginia.
Huh?
Road trip to West Virginia.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Find us
There-
some scales.
I will say this,
I would imagine it would be.
there are some nice things about West Virginia besides Cole.
I just know that they have a lot of cool.
They do,
Only
they do.
reason I mentioned it.
Blue Ridge Mountains and the Shenandoah River.
Except the Shenandoah River runs through a very, very small portion of the state. The person who wrote that song did not look at a map. It runs through the Panhandle near DC. It does not run through the book. And
That's
the,
good.
and the Blue Ridge Mountains are actually more in Virginia than they are in West Virginia.
Oh, so
Okay. Anything else?
I move to adjourn.
Oh, boy.
I'll second.
A motion from Jeff Ford, seconded by David Sander to adjourn. Is there any discussion?
Before we adjourn, Jeff, I just want to thank you for your service.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys are doing the work going
You put a
forward.
lot of time and effort in and,
So you're gonna become a gadfly out there in the gallery and strut?
Oh, watch out.
I disagree.
Watch out.
Okay,
What you know could be.
it is 8:52 PM. We may just come, if we can get this adjournment vote held in the next 8 minutes, we're good. Please state your name and your vote.
Please say aye.
Bard, aye.
I move to table it.
I moved to kill.
Motion fails for lack of a second.
David, I.
And Jay, aye. Okay, so Jeff, do you want to vote or not?
Yes, I.
Jeff votes aye. We are adjourned. I will see you all tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock at the middle school for a town meeting if I don't see you sooner.
Thank you.